This morning in our interviews, we're going to interview Mark Sheldrake, one of our deacons at Central. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Pastor Donald. How are you?
I am well.
Good.
Wanted to ask you about your background, where you were born and raised, and your early schooling.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born and raised, I was born in Hamilton, and then I was raised in Cambridge until I was 11 years old. And then my parents picked us up and moved us to Brantford for work. And we've been here ever since.
Okay.
So I went to high school in Brantford. I started grade 6 in Brantford, all at Pauline Johnson High School and Brandlin Public School.
Okay, good. And then after school, what was next in your life?
Yeah, when I was 16 or 17 years old, the youth pastor in my church that I was attending, he recognized in me leadership skills, and he started to bring me on as an intern to teach me about pastoral ministry. I just felt deep down in my heart that I wanted to serve the Lord in ministry for the rest of my life. My mom once told me, she said, Mark, you're either going to be two things. You're either going to be a pastor or a car salesman. And I ended up going down the route of being a pastor. And so at 18 years old, while I was still a teenager, just starting to go to Redeemer College at the time, our youth pastor resigned from the church, and the church hired me to be the youth pastor. And so 18 is when I started doing ministry in a part-time basis and going to school. But after my first year of university at Redeemer, I was not invited back for a second year, mostly due to what I think was my immaturity. And apparently you have to attend class to pass class. So I did not go back to Redeemer, and I took a year off, worked in a factory in Brantford, and in that year really honed my desire to serve the Lord, and then went to Immanuel Bible College and graduated Immanuel in their professional studies program in education and theology. Mm-hmm. So that took me out of high school. And then, of course, in the midst of all that, I married my wife, Jessica, during our university years. So, it's been quite an eventful time.
So after you finished at Immanuel, what was next in your life?
After I graduated from Immanuel, I was already serving in a church as a youth pastor in Hamilton, but I was also working part-time with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship in the high schools. So I built and developed Christian school groups and ran them in the schools, and worked alongside the people who were running the program at McMaster. And so I served in Hamilton for 5 years as the youth pastor. And then after those 5 years, I was invited to come back and work at Immanuel Baptist Church in Brantford as the youth pastor, and then eventually moved into an interim senior pastor role and did that for 2 years. So that's been quite a journey. So from 18, I worked at Immanuel Baptist Church as the youth pastor, left, served a number of years outside of that church, and then went back. and served as the youth pastor and interim back in Brantford. And that's what brought me, to keep staying in Brantford the entire
Mhm.
time.
Good.
Yeah.
And when did you start coming to Central?
We started coming to Central. We were at Central for a few years, a number of years ago. And then we kind of stepped back a bit and helped plant another church in Brantford. But we started attending a little over 14 months ago, I think. And we came back to Central because we really wanted to be in a place where we could serve and use the gifts that God has given us to be not only an impact in our community. Because I serve with the ministry of precept, I have this opportunity to travel all around the world teaching the Bible, but I really wanted to also have an opportunity to serve in my hometown, not under the guise of precept, but in the local church.
Mhm.
And that was an opportunity that God opened the door for us to say, Central is a great place to be able to teach, and we love the doctrinal stance of the church. We really appreciated Pastor Steve's teaching, and our son, who has autism, was engaged in the church. We didn't have any problems getting him to go to church on Sundays, which was fantastic. So we decided to make Central our home and get involved. And next thing I know, I'm a deacon.
Yeah. Okay. And what is your role as a deacon?
So I'm currently in the role of learning. That's one thing, because there's a lot of things to learn. But I'm also overseeing evangelism and discipleship with yourself, right? And my whole desire is my life's passion, which is to have people engaged in relationship with God through knowing his word. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what gets me excited. And so my desire is to see even people at Central engaging in God's word. And here's why, and I promise I won't preach. Deuteronomy chapter 32, near the end, when Moses is about to die and he is going to climb Mount Nebo, he's going to look at the promised land, and then he's not going to go with Israel into the promised land. He tells the Israelites, he says, take the word to your heart, because it's not an idle word, it is your life. And you see, that's God's word is the central part of how we communicate with God. And so that's why my desire, that's where I feel a perfect fit in evangelism and discipleship, is because discipleship is taking God's word, letting it wash over us, impact our lives, and then living it out.
Good.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. That's an encouragement, and I'm sure it'll be an encouragement to all of our people. We appreciate you sharing with us this morning. Just to finish, you are full-time in precepts, aren't you?
Yeah, I currently run the ministry in Canada, and so I'm doing that full-time. And right now it feels like part-time, because normally I'm traveling quite a bit across the country. But currently, yeah, that's my full-time role.
Good. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us, and look forward to fellowship in the work in the days ahead. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.